George is the founder, president, and chief executive officer of Wine Industry Network, WIN. So, specifically in this episode, our three key takeaways. First, times are tough, but there are brands that are still winning. So, how are they doing that? Number two, you must be willing to change the way you've been operating if you want to have a chance of succeeding. So, we'll go deeper into George's insights on that. And then the third, we as an industry need to do a better job of engaging with consumers, especially those younger generations, and also the wine curious, really of all ages. Welcome to Masterclass U.S. Wine Market with me, Barbara Fitzgerald. In this show, we'll break down the complexities of selling wine in the U.S. by discussing the relevant issues of today with experts from around the globe. Each episode serves up three key insights to help elevate your winery's presence in the U.S. market. So grab a pen and paper and let's pave the way for your success in the U.S. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Masterclass U.S. Wine Market. Today, I'm very excited to welcome George Christie to the show. George is the founder, president, and chief executive officer of Wine Industry Network, WIN. The company really keeps industry professionals informed about current trends and industry news, as well as the latest products, services, jobs, and innovations in the production, viticulture, sales, marketing, and management categories. So welcome to the show, George. It's really great to have you here, especially because, we are Sonoma County neighbors. So it's nice to keep it local.
I'm super happy to be here, Barbara. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to it.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, before we dive into today's discussion, George, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you came to work in the wine business?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it as succinct as I can, but I didn't grow up in the wine industry. I grew up in the East Coast, actually along the Jersey Shore. I came out to Northern California after I graduated from college, and I really describe it to a lot of people as sort of like running away from home. I had graduated from college, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd never been to California, and for people who are not from California could probably appreciate this. It's just like this magical land, right? So I was like, go to California. And I had this great plan that I was going to go to California, become very successful, and then go back home. And I had a friend who was coming here already to Rohnert Park, which is just north of San Francisco. We knew a kid who was graduating from college. And my plan was just, like I said, land, go to San Francisco and get to it. But I wound up getting a job in Healdsburg, a little beautiful wine country town, for those of you that haven't been here, the heart of Sonoma County. And I just fell in love with the town. And then it was like, well, how do I stay here? And we were surrounded by wineries and vineyards. And, I had a business degree, but I had no experience. And I got really lucky. I was hired by a small little winery called Lake Sonoma Winery, which no longer exists. But it was really cool. I didn't make any money. So I was waiting tables at night. But I didn't care because nobody knew me here, right? Even my friend had gone home. So it was perfectly cool to just kind of do your own thing without feeling self-conscious. My parents kind of going like, what are you doing with, your life? But it was great because at this little winery, and all little wineries are the same, everybody has to do a little bit of everything. So obviously I spent time helping out in the tasting room and for our events. I did a lot of administrative work, right? Because I had some experience there, but I helped out, during crush. I was down there. We just had like the open tops and doing some punch downs and pump overs. I got out and I spent a lot of time in the vineyard pruning, doing repairs. When we bottled, we all were on the bottling line. So it was just a really awesome training opportunity for me to learn a little bit about the different aspects of the operations. And what happened to me was very lucky was it was just a small little, mom and pop and their son, and mom and dad were very elderly. The father passed away and they sold the winery to Corbel and they kept me on. And then I was part of like a fairly significant winery operation. Anyway, and I just loved it. I loved the people. I just loved everything about it.
I love this story because, it's all about the people, right? And I can speak too about our charming little town of Healdsburg. There's so many elements to me that remind me of kind of small town life in Italy and the way people support one another and know each other's business, but also really, there's one thing here that really keeps us thriving. So nice little parallel.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. Like sometimes I think back on it, it's like, how did I land? Like, I just got lucky, it's like wound up here. I don't know. Sometimes things are, I guess, just meant to be.
Absolutely. Well, we'll spend some time today delving deeper into all of the experience that you've gained and expertise. So, we'll really get some valuable insights from your time in this industry to better understand both the challenges and the opportunities that are present currently in the US wine market. So, specifically in this episode, our three key takeaways and what we're really excited to learn from George about are first, probably surprise to no one, times are tough, but there are brands that are still winning. So, how are they doing that? Number two, you must be willing to change the way you've been operating if you want to have a chance of succeeding. So we'll go deeper into George's insights on that. And then the third, we as an industry need to do a better job of engaging with consumers, especially those younger generations and also the wine curious, really of all ages. So let's dive in because you have a lot of juicy tidbits to offer us.
I'll do. Hopefully, that's like they're things that I think we should be doing, but hopefully it makes sense to everybody else. So, yeah, where do you want to start, Barbara?
So you mentioned there are some brands that are still winning despite the tough time. So
Yeah.
could you share a few examples and explain what you really think sets these brands apart?
Well, I don't want to like pick on specific brands exactly, but what I would tell you is that what they all have in common is I think they're willing to do things a little bit different. You just referenced that, people, we're in this, the fortunate or unfortunate situation where we get a lot of, people asking questions about, what our thoughts are, what my thoughts on what we should be doing. And what I tell people is like, there is no one single thing that's going to make that big of a difference. It's not like, hey, you're going to do a label change and that's going to cure all your problems. Or you're going to venture into adding a sparkling, or you're going to add a no alcohol choice to the lineup. I don't think there's any one thing that works for everybody. But one thing I am certain of is that if you don't embrace change, if you're not willing to experiment and do something different, then you're just going to get more of the same. You will fade away because there's too many other people that are working really, really hard to survive. I mean, it is not easy. It's never been easy. I've said this a lot to people when we talk about, succeeding in the wine industry. I don't think it's complicated. I think that, obviously you have to make a good product. Okay. That's just to get you a seat at the table because we are surrounded by awesome wine producers and great winemakers and talented grape growers. You got to price it in the realm of reality. Okay. You can't just go out there and go, hey, this bottle's worth $1,000. You've got to be living in real world as it comes to your pricing. But mainly you have to be willing to you just have to be working hard, be willing to work hard all the time, to be out there selling all the time. And that's the part that I think, and again, this is no secret for anybody who's in our industry, but I think that's the part that really that's where the rubber meets the road. Are you willing to be engaging with customers all the time? I don't care if it's at your tasting room or you're out in the marketplace or you're getting on airplanes or whatever it is. You have to be okay with that. It has to be kind of built into your DNA because you can't fake it. You can't sustain that kind of energy. You have to really love it. And if you do, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I like that you called out, the willingness to change, which is really scary in our industry because, we're not like other alcohol industries where they kind of have many chances throughout the year to make the product. So we understand why it might be scary in the wine industry. But actually, I heard Robert Joseph give a really great analogy. I thought that, people often say if you keep doing something the same, you're always going to get the same results. And he said, no, actually, if you keep doing something the same, eventually your results are going to diminish more and more. So if you have a bag of potato chips and every day you're pulling one chip out, eventually you're going to have no potato chips.
Yeah. So we do some interviews here, and we interviewed a gentleman who's the CEO of Wine Shipping, and Wine Shipping is obviously a big company. We had a similar conversation, and he referenced a book I think called "Who Moved the Cheese." It's a kind of more of like a parable, but the gist of it is like if you just keep going back, it's not like you're going to get the same. It's going to diminish. I think that when I think about our industry, we've had great success, right? We've had a heck of a run. It's been wonderful for a long time. I think part of the challenge for some of the folks that we see out there, especially small to medium sized guys, those folks, those families that were running those wineries, for the last 2 or 3 decades, they're starting to get a little bit older. And change is, and I'm getting older. I'll be 59 this year. It's like I like to think that I'm pretty flexible and we're pretty open to change, but I think it gets harder as you get older. And I think for a lot of those folks, it's like, oh my God, like the technology, the change and the rapid change in the technology that's available can be overwhelming. I'll pick on our little continue to pick on like little Healdsburg, and most of my career was in Dry Creek Valley. When I first started, I think there were like 20 wineries or something. And then now I think there's like 40 or something, so it's like
Mhm.
it's gotten, progressively more competitive. It's gotten more expensive, the cost of doing business. And I just sometimes think you run out of energy.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's
Well,
some of what we're seeing.
as you said, to do this successfully, you have to be willing to kind of running on all cylinders kind of all the time.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. You mentioned that definitely understandable older generations have a harder time. It's not even that they're unwilling to change, but it's just harder in general to learn new systems, new processes. But what do you suggest? Is it helpful then to have younger people, like hire younger people to your team or
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, yes, it's harder. But the good news is that the tools that you have access to actually help you run your business better, right? So the ability to, pick on some of like the point of sale systems that are now, available that weren't available 20 years ago. You really dive in and understand who your customer is, what they like, and then cater your communication to them based on that versus the other way, which is like, hey, we've got a lot of Chardonnay to sell. Let's push the Chardonnay. Well, they don't drink Chardonnay. They like your Zin or they like your Cab. So the tools are great. And they're actually not so, they actually make them so they're easier to use, but it's just anything new is intimidating. I do think that embracing and bringing younger people into the operation is important, and not just as an employee, but giving them a voice. I'll share with you kind of a funny experience I had. So I was at a meeting not too long ago where there were, I don't know, like maybe like 20 or so executive directors from different associations around the state and around the country. And one of the topics that they wanted to cover was like, what can we be doing to better engage with younger consumers, right? That's like the never-ending, evergreen topic to talk about these days. And I was looking around the room, and I definitely wasn't the youngest person in the room, but I was about nearly the youngest person in the room, and everyone else was like, significantly, in some cases, significantly older than me. And I just said, like, oh my God, like, what are we doing? Like, we're talking about how to better connect with, let's say, people like in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, et cetera. Here's an idea. Like, why don't we have people who are in their younger 30s participating in this conversation? And it was kind of a funny comment, funny observation at the time. But, if you think about all of the different, and again, I know there's some exceptions, but if you think about all of the articles that are out there, you think about a lot of the industry folks that are on these, the kind of the regular speakers that we hear on a regular basis, most of them are not young 30-year-old people. So at what point do we start to shift and start giving those people a platform and a voice? Because that, to me, that's one of the big things we need to be thinking about.
absolutely. I think that you see that, there's the circuit of really high quality, trade shows and symposiums for the wine industry. But often we're seeing the same people speak time and again. And don't get me wrong, I get value out of what they say. They're experts for a reason, but it might be a good idea to also start hearing from some other voices, especially the ones that we feel we're not connecting with.
We're guilty of that. We put on trade shows and conferences and webinars all the time, and we go back to the well all the time. And I mean, listen, there's a lot to be said for somebody who's my age or older. They've been around, they've seen a lot of the different cycles, and they have a lot of expertise to bring to the conversation. So, I'm not dismissing
Absolutely.
what they have to say, but it's like we should be figuring out how to sprinkle in some of these other folks. And I don't know. I think about this a lot of time, and I'll use a kind of an example, get off wines for a second, but I think about some of the greatest songs that have ever been written and created. Think about, they're all written by people like in their 20s. You know what I mean? Like, because I think there's something to be said for just the freedom to not know what you don't know, and you just let it rip. I don't know. I just feel like that's going to be the next sort of iteration for industry. Is going to be the emergence of the next generation, and I think that is what's going to kind of get us out of the rut that we're in now and propel us to the next level. I just don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, even I think within, there's fear to change, not just in our operations, but, in the voices that we listen to also, because this is such an experiential industry. So we want to hear from the people that we think maybe have the most experience, but maybe it's not the most experience versus just the most relevant experience.
Yeah, there's probably a blend, but you know what's great about like even things like you're doing right now. So platforms like this, weren't available a bunch of years ago. So it's
Yeah.
our access to information and opinions and expertise is just so much better now than it ever was.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
It does take time. And to your point earlier about tools in the wine industry, like, yes, what a game changer. I remember when I first started working in wine clubs almost like 18 years ago, we were still keeping our customer records in an Excel spreadsheet. And so now that we have these really powerful tools available, and the beauty of these companies, no matter what your age is, their success is your success. So often they have onboarding teams and support teams that are really available to help you understand the features and how to best use them. Obviously, they're not going to make a strategy plan for you, but at least so that you can really understand the functionality well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that they bring to the conversation is a broader perspective. So you can kind of like, it's not just, how do we do things? Well, this is the way we've always done them. And in that particular case, change is always going to be, slow and thoughtful. But when you're working with a company, let's say like it's a point of sale company or, and I'll plug the wine shipping conversation, they're working with so many different producers. They've seen so many different ways of executing that they can share some of those best practices and just kind of speed up the learning curve for folks.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so we keep saying the world is very different now than it was even a
Yeah.
few years ago. So, what do you see really in our post pandemic world? What is different about the way wine brands market and sell their product, and maybe some strategies that you've seen prove successful in reaching customers in this time?
Well, one of the things I really love about the evolution, I don't know how new this is, but I think we're just getting better at it, is being able to really capture and communicate the brand personality to their audience. Obviously, like, beginning with like Facebook, but now migrating away like Instagram or TikTok and all these different ways that you can really show who you are beyond the brand. And I think that's become more and more important. When I was just getting started, getting that 90 something point score in Spectator or Enthusiast was like a gold medal here and there. It was like, that was awesome. And it really didn't have the tools to like reach a broad audience with like your winemaker explaining the new release like you can today. So for me, I'm like a big fan, and I'll give you a couple, I think, examples I think are doing a really good job of leveraging the technology to kind of make the world a little smaller. So I'm a big fan of Kim Stair-Wallace over at Dry Creek Vineyards. Kim might be a little bit younger than me, but she's kind of more of my generation. But she's like every week or so, I'm seeing like a little video of Kim, talking to that Dry Creek Vineyards audience. And I think she's really good at it because she's unscripted or seems to be unscripted. She's very natural. I know her. So like I know she's
Hmm.
tell if she's faking it or not, I think. And she's just real. And not unlike what you would experience if you showed up on the property and ran into her, out in the picnic area. Another cool example, I think what they're doing well is the folks over at Pedro and Shelley. They've been around for a long time, but I feel like they've really done a great job in the last bunch of years of just upping their communication game and capturing their personality. So those are the things I think that are where technology has really been awesome as a way just to stay connected. Because like I said, there's so many, we all know this, walk down any wine aisle, there are so many choices. There's most of the choices are going to be pretty good. You're probably going to be happy with what you buy. So how do you differentiate yourself, right? You differentiate yourself by your
Definitely.
personality. And that's something that I love.
Definitely. I was just listening to a conversation about how really there's like not really flawed wines in the market anymore. Like 30 years ago, maybe you would pick up a wine that was oxidized or reduced or had Brett or something. But now, for the most part, these wines are pretty technically, quote unquote, flawless. So, how can you differentiate yourself? And I think you're calling out some really good examples of ways to take your personality and spread it.
Yeah, it's the one ownable, really quote unquote ownable thing that is nearly impossible to replicate, right? Because we've all heard
Yeah.
like, oh, everything is handcrafted and the wines are made in the vineyard and we've got only the best barrels and blah blah blah. But I mean, it's like everybody says that, but when you kind of get to know the people behind the brand, especially for small, for the smaller producers who don't have, the bigger budgets, they're not moving hundreds of thousands of cases. That's a totally different animal. For those smaller guys, and I'd say like even like from 100,000 cases and below, really dependent upon the support of the repeat customers, that are going to, continue to support you and bring your bottle pull it off of a wine list, bring it to a friend's house, recommend somebody visit your winery if you're going to be in wine country. Building those disciples, it's just so
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. And from my own personal experience, I had at a winery 13 years ago because it was on my honeymoon in Piemonte that I still talk about to this day. I still drink those wines to this day. It's like you can make a lifelong ambassador by connecting well with your audience.
And it's funny. I don't know anything about what happened with you, but I'll bet you it's a heck of a lot more to do with the people that you met and the experience that
Absolutely.
you went through than the wines that you tasted. You kind of go, because really, I mean, that's what people remember. They go, oh man, that was a really cool thing, and that's why one of the things that I get a little bit. Not everybody agrees with me on this, but like I don't love how we've changed with regard to like tasting fees and appointments and things like that. I feel like in some ways, I get why people, some wineries have embraced it. Some embraced it more than others. But I also feel like, gosh, like I miss those days when you could come to wine country. You're visiting San Francisco. You take a day or two in wine country. You don't know much about wine. You could pop in to a tasting room. Somebody nice would be there to greet you. And you go and you learn a little something and you have a good experience. And that's the kind of thing that really resonates when they go back home and go, you know what? I didn't really know much about wine, but I visited a couple of tasting rooms. I learned a couple of things, and now I'm starting to buy some wine. I feel like the way we've evolved, and maybe I'm just picking on Sonoma Napa a little bit. It's just gotten so cost prohibitive for people, especially younger people, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that we need to take a serious look at.
I agree completely because we've lost that, to your point, that customer. So it used to be you could rely really heavily on people, weekenders coming up from the Bay Area just for the day to go wine tasting. But now that they think it's cost prohibitive or it's calendar prohibitive, like you have to have a reservation weeks in advance, they're not coming up. And when we're talking about losing, tourism down, how can we communicate to them that they're still welcome here or
Yeah,
anywhere where you're trying to find tourists, visitors?
yeah, it's a challenge. There's no easy solutions because on the flip side, the reality is that running these winery operations has gotten a lot more expensive as well. So it's
Absolutely.
another thing in our world that's just complicated. It's very gray.
Yeah. Kind of on this point, do you have maybe some ideas for actionable steps some brands, wineries can take to improve their operations and really stay relevant in today's rapidly changing market?
Well, I don't know about like much advice of like changing your operations. I think some of the things we talked about earlier, regardless of what aspect of the winery operation we're talking about, I think there are technology solutions that can help you be more efficient. I think you have to be looking. They are looking at it's it's another term I use a lot. It's like necessity being the mother of invention. Like if you're having labor issues, you better figure out a way around that. So I think technology is a big thing. I think in terms of making our region, you could pick on any little appellation or any county. I do think that and this is what's the beautiful thing about our industry is like we do recognize it's important for us to continue to work together. That's why our winery associations are so important. I would love to see, and I think we're starting to see it now, but like, hey, no tasting fees Wednesday or no tasting fees March, or, just things that just putting those special offers out there to people to make it a little bit more enticing, knowing that once they're here, it's very easy to fall in love with wine country and going exploring, these different wineries and different wines. But we got to, you've got to get them here, and there lies the challenge. But listen, I know that the wine industry is going through challenging times, but it's not going to go away. It's just too much a part of life, and it has been for thousands of years. I would say the same thing about wine country. I don't care if you're up in Northern California or along the Central Coast or other emerging wine regions around the country. There's just something cool about being at a winery and surrounded by vineyards and tasting something that was came from the fruit that just outside the window there. It just is something cool about that.
Absolutely. We might be biased, but I don't know. I think, especially, if you're thinking also about Italy, the feeling of going to these places that is so connected to the naturalness of the area, but also connected to the community and how the community thrives. It just feels like what better way is there to, experience a culture than to have something like this?
Yeah, no, it's not us. Time, man. They come here, they go, "Oh my God, this is great. I want to live here. I want to move here." And
Yeah.
if they're wealthy enough, they go, "You know what? I need to buy one of these things. This is the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever." And they realize Oh yeah, you got to work hard. It's not easy.
Yes.
It's not all like, it's not all, beautiful
Yeah, it's
food
not
and
all
wine.
clinking glasses and gourmet food. Well, you did also mention in your takeaways that we need to do a better job of connecting with the wine curious. So,
Yeah.
what does that mean to you? Who are the wine curious?
Well, I kind of alluded to that a little bit in the comment that I just made about, those folks that are out there and they're going to go visit San Francisco and then maybe visit the Redwoods and check out the Northern California coast. And hey, let's go check out wine country because they're, paint a picture of like somebody who maybe did not grow up with, wine on their tables, on a regular basis. It wasn't part of their, what their mom and dad did. So, but they see it, you see it on TV, about wine, but it's going to be a little intimidating. That's what I mean by the wine curious. That person goes like, you know what? I'd like to learn a little bit more. I'm maybe a little too afraid to ask, but I just don't know anything. So I'll order a cocktail. Those are like the wine curious people that I want us to get back to doing a good job with. And that's where I kind of go back to like, I think for those folks, that's where it can get a little bit intimidating, whether it's the cost of a tasting or having to schedule, far out in advance. I mean, just coming to like picking on our little town here, it's like, I don't know how many wineries are within like a 15-mile radius.
I think it's 90 something. I've had to look it up before. It's like 90 something.
It's nuts. And so, that's not that much different than walking down a wine aisle and saying, hey, go grab a bottle of wine. It's like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. Like, where do I go? To the biggest one, to the smallest one? I don't know. So I just think finding ways to make those kinds of folks feel welcome and invited and give them the chance. Like, I remember like being in a tasting room and having to deal with folks like that back in the day. And I love when I get people like that because I would just say, hey, 'cause you could tell they were nervous. It's like, hey, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through some wines. I'll tell you a little bit about them. And all you need to do is we'll try to figure out what you like and what you don't like. And that's it. If I pour you something and you don't like it, just dump it out right in the dump bucket. And you're not offending me. It's all good. Like, so let's just have a little fun with it. And I think those people always bought something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think they would like back to like what we talked about. I think my goal was like to have them have a good experience and feel like, you know what, that was pretty cool. And that maybe not feel so intimidated when they go to the next place.
Yeah, because they're feeling supported by you in their discovery. And that's when we're talking about a subject that is a little, let's face it, complex. It's so helpful to have people that are supporting you in opening the door.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if we could just, and I know what it's like, right, to kind of go like, you don't, people to go like, they don't know if it's good or bad, right? It's like, you know what? It's all that matters is if you like it. But it's just like, it seems like such a simple thing, but it's not so simple when when you start thinking about the regular consumer. There's just something to be said for like for those folks feeling intimidated. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's spend a moment here. We'll do a little plug for Wine Industry Network, but this is really we're talking earlier about tools and tech, and this is a great tool. So, can you explain a little bit more how it supports professionals to stay informed about current trends and industry news, and also really, especially, I guess, related to engaging these new consumers that we're really
yeah,
hungry for?
so it's always hard to kind of explain exactly what we do at Wine Industry Network. It's on one hand, a lot of what we do is work to support our industry vendors, right? So those guys sell bottles, barrels, corks, et cetera. We do a lot of marketing and promotion on their behalf. We put on trade shows and conferences. But the real value proposition that we offer them is access to a wine industry audience, those folks that need those bottles, barrels, corks, tractors, et cetera. And so to that end, what we work really hard at is being a great resource for them. So whether that's trying to stay up on wine industry news, we have an email that goes out Monday through Friday called our afternoon brief. It just recaps what's happening in the industry to keep them informed and make it really easy for them to stay informed. We put on conferences, in-person traditional conferences where we tackle subject matter from, production, vineyard sales and marketing, and what we call strategy and leadership, sort of big picture thinking. During COVID, we really jumped in with both feet on producing webinars, educational webinars, because we were like, how do we need to continue to push information out there, which we continue to do because that's really fun. We can get expert speakers from all over the world to speak to our audience, but all of that really falling under the umbrella of we want to be a great business resource, regardless of what your role is in the industry. And I think the other thing that we do, which I'm proud of, and we'll always do, is continue to support other organizations like our winery associations and their efforts to keep things moving in a positive direction, because they play such an important role, and I don't think that they get the credit that they deserve. And I'm not sure why, but they just don't. They're kind of those unsung heroes. So we're big supporters of our winery associations as well.
That's wonderful. And so you are based in the US in Sonoma County, but really what you offer is relevant to an international audience. And so Italians, for example, could participate in the webinars. And
Absolutely. We work very closely with some of our Italian friends, especially on the production side. There was one particular group called Vineyards, an event called Forum, and it's more technical, but there's a lot to be learned from what our colleagues are doing around the world. So we try to do the best we can to include those. There's a lot. I mean, for the most part, it's our audience is primarily a North American wine industry audience, but on the speaker side, if you will, they're a lot of folks from all over the world.
Yeah, so always something to learn from everybody.
You know what? We're all in it together.
Yes, exactly. Well, as we start to kind of wind things down a little bit, we like to wrap up our episodes with a rapid fire quiz where we ask our guests 3 questions to really help our listeners better understand the US market and really specifically this episode. So if you could just answer in a few sentences, that would be great. Number 1, pretty broad. What is your number 1 tip for mastering the US wine market?
You've got to have a plan. So have a plan, and you need to spend time in the market. So if you're out there, if your goal is to, let's say, attack because most brands are going to attack a region, right? They're not going to try to do the entire country. Spend time in that region, spend time in the market, build those relationships, and do a lot of listening. Do more listening than talking.
I love that. Such a good reminder to, be a good listener. Okay, number 2, what is something you would have told your younger professional self about selling wine in the US?
I think I would have tried to calm myself down and just say, hey, it's not as complicated as you think. What you don't know, you will learn. There are so many people out there that are going to be willing to teach you. You have to be okay with asking for help. And I guess go back to what I just said. It's like, listen, pay attention. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. There are folks out there that will help you.
Great advice. I love that too. All right. Number 3, we all move around a lot in the wine industry. So what is your favorite travel hack when doing market work?
For me, I think sort of embrace. So when you travel and you're out there in the market, you're not catching up. It's hard to keep up on what's happening with your, the emails and some of the other things you need to do. My big thing was like, take advantage of that plane time. When you're on the plane, I know you want to watch, something downloaded on Netflix or just completely zone out. But for me, that was the time that I would catch up on all of my work because I was uninterrupted. And then that would allow me to be present when I was in the marketplace. So I think that was my big thing. Is like, don't waste that plane time. That's a perfect time to take care of your business. And then it can allow you to focus when you're out there doing your thing.
Yeah. Great advice too. Like it's, especially if you're coming from Italy, that's, somewhere between 6 and 12 hours, depending on where you're going in the US. So, well, George, thank you so much for being here with us today on Masterclass US Wine Market, part of the Italian Wine Podcast. How can our listeners connect with you or connect with Wine Industry Network?
Yep. If you're interested in learning a little more about Wine Industry Network, so go to wineindustry.network.com. For the news that I mentioned, we have a sister site, an editorial site called Wine Industry Advisor, wineindustryadvisor.com. That afternoon brief that I referenced, that is free. You could sign up for that, wineindustryadvisor.com. And I think that's just a great way, a great start for people to want to just get up to speed on what's happening on a regular basis.
Amazing. Well, okay. Thank you again so much for being here with us. And being that we're just down the road from each other, I hope to see you very soon.
I hope so, Barbara. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah. Take care.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Masterclass US Wine Market. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest industry trends, remember to like, follow, and share our podcast. And if you find value in our conversations, please leave us a review to help others discover the show and grow our community. Stay tuned for new episodes every Monday. Until then, brindiamo il vostro successo.